Microsoft and OpenAI have met and signed a peace treaty, so this entire generative AI business can move forward. Sam Altman plots out OpenAI's next 3 years, big tech earnings come in, and there's a new humanoid robot in town. That's coming up on a very spooky Big Technology Podcast Friday edition right after this. Welcome to Big Technology Podcast Friday edition, where we break down the news in our traditional cool-headed and nuanced format. We have a great show for you today because finally, the AI deal of the century is done. Microsoft and OpenAI have a resolution. OpenAI might be heading towards an IPO. And finally, all the funding that OpenAI has been promised can start pouring in because the structure is here. We're also going to talk about Sam Altman's vision for the next 3 years of the company, how OpenAI has become maybe a little too metafied, big tech earnings, and of course, there is a new humanoid robot that Ranjan and I are both eager to discuss. So, joining us, as always, on Friday is Ranjan Roy. Ranjan, happy Halloween.
Have you pre-ordered your Neo robot just yet?
No, to me, that is, of all spooky headlines this week, that is the spookiest, and I'm staying far away. How about you?
I have not pre-ordered it either, but I don't know. I don't think it's that spooky. I want a robot standing right next to me, just, handling all of my work, all of my household tasks.
All right, we will save that debate for the end because I think you and I will have diverging opinions on this.
Pro Neo.
As part of our service here to the public, discussing the benefits and the downsides of AI and robotics, we'll have to get into it. But first, I think the biggest story of the week, and really the biggest story of the quarter, if you ask me, maybe this entire half of the year, is the fact that OpenAI and Microsoft have a deal. This is from the Wall Street Journal. OpenAI has successfully converted to a more traditional corporate structure, a move that cleared an obstacle for a potential initial public offering and pushed the valuation of longtime partner Microsoft above $4 trillion. The artificial intelligence startup has turned its for-profit subsidiary into a public benefit corporation, of which Microsoft will own 27%. The conversion will grant OpenAI's nonprofit parent a stake in the for-profit worth $130 billion, with the ability to get more ownership as the for-profit becomes more valuable. The deal ends nearly a year of wrangling with the attorneys general of California and Delaware, who have the power to regulate nonprofits, as well as with the broader philanthropic community and key investors over the question of whether the AI juggernaut could remain true to its mission while transforming into a more conventional company. Ranjan, first question for you here is, well, OpenAI has made this deal. So like Microsoft becomes a more traditional investor in the company, but it's still controlled by a nonprofit. And it was, if you think about the conversion itself, it's going from it's going from a for-profit subsidiary into a public benefit corporation. What is the big deal here?
This is actually, I'm going to ask back to you. Can you explain in clear language what you think this means? Because I still have a hard time trying to understand, again, that the nonprofit has a stake in the for-profit worth $130 billion and will get more ownership as the for-profit becomes more valuable. It still felt very OpenAI corporate structure-y to me. Like, it didn't help necessarily clear up a lot of what's been vague about everything so far. Do you understand what is going on?
So I'll be the first to admit, not fully.
Okay.
Why I think this is important, this is why I think it's the most important story, is because Microsoft's ownership in OpenAI is finally cleared up. And yes, there's going to always be some weirdness with OpenAI when it comes to the nonprofit and the for-profit, the public benefit corporation. But up until this point, you had Microsoft in this position where it was entitled to 50% of OpenAI's profits. It had an determined ownership percentage of the company. And it also had access to all of its IP rights, and it could potentially lose access to all that if OpenAI just said, hey, we've hit AGI. So I think that to me is the biggest thing that needed sorted out. And until that became sorted out, until this sort of conversion was complete and Microsoft was baked in as a traditional investor, the company couldn't move forward. And now it's been settled and now it can move forward. So to me, that is the biggest point. And of course, we know Microsoft had been holding it up because it was trying to negotiate and strong arm OpenAI for a large percentage, even larger, I think, than it got of this public benefit corporation. That is the big deal to me. What do you think?
Okay, I'll agree with you. I mean, if nothing else, the fact that this opens up the conversation around an OpenAI IPO, that is massive news. I think as well, one of my favorite parts of the agreement was you'd mentioned IP. Microsoft still will have exclusive IP rights to OpenAI technology until 2032. So there's a long time that whatever OpenAI makes, Microsoft still has access to. But I also loved that the deal has OpenAI committing to purchase an additional $250 billion worth of Azure cloud computing services. So, of course, I mean, Microsoft, I think, came out pretty good here, maintaining 27% ownership, getting just a massive commitment in terms of compute and compute spend over the next number of years, maintaining exclusive IP rights. So I guess it does appear everyone does seem to win here.
That's right. And I think the Microsoft thing is quite interesting. For Microsoft, you are leaving this. It's an amazing deal for Microsoft. I mean, of course, Microsoft sort of had OpenAI in a stranglehold, right? And again, that's why I think this is important. And now it sort of loosened that a little bit. It's allowing OpenAI, for instance, to, it no longer has like first right of refusal to work with OpenAI on infrastructure projects. But it still keeps 27% of the company. It still keeps the IP, as you mentioned, till 2032. And so what I think Satya Nadella is doing here is threading the needle. And actually, if folks listened to the Scott Guthrie interview here on the show a couple weeks ago, you sort of saw it trending this way, which is Satya is saying, you may be able to build, an amazing company or this sort of unprecedented new technology by scaling up what you have today. And Microsoft doesn't want to bet its entire company facilitating that for OpenAI. So it relinquishes some of its stake in what OpenAI was going to get in the future for two things. First of all, there's 27% of the company, which is massive. And then, and the IP rights. So as we enter the most critical build out of generative AI, Microsoft will be the one that owns, the IP rights of the most important company. And then it says basically, if you want to go build with others. So it prevents itself from getting the downsides of, like, let's say, facilitating this whole build out and having to, effectively mortgage your company's financial future to do it. So it's, I think, a terrific move for Microsoft.
Well, Satya is feeling good because he in that coverage, he starts talking about how they're a platform company. And Satya has the quote, "My mindset is all platform. I'm happy with OpenAI. I'd love to have Anthropic, Grok, anyone. If Google wants to put Gemini on Azure, please do so." He's feeling pretty good right now, I think. And for good reason.
That was a very important quote from Satya. It's him washing his hands of OpenAI in a way.
Yep.
I mean, you realize that Azure is going to be OpenAI's models will only be available on Azure and and through OpenAI's API. That's it, unless it gets Satya's blessing. And so now Satya's saying, well, we're going to already have this halo. By the way, we're going to get to earnings, I guess, but we'll probably thread them throughout. Microsoft Azure grew 39% year over year in this most recent quarter. I mean, that's astonishing. And so why wouldn't Satya then, now that he's effectively, he has his ownership stake in OpenAI, he has, and he has the exclusive rights. Why wouldn't he, continue to welcome all the other models and make Azure the go-to place for anybody looking to build with this technology?
Yeah, I think, again, we'll get more into earnings. We'll get more into the potential for an AI bubble or a wobble, as one of my favorite phrases of the week came out. But 39% on a business of this scale. I've worked at, mid 100 million revenue startups. 39% is a massive number. And Azure is just incredibly well placed. And I think this idea of just openly talking about platform, even kind of throwing shade and just saying, if Google wants to put Gemini on there, I think they are in a very good place right now.
Now, even though their nonprofit will will appoint the board of the for-profit side of OpenAI, I think by all intents and purposes, it's become one entity. There's only one board member on the nonprofit that's not on the for-profit side. And that's where a lot of folks are saying, this is effectively the end of the nonprofit, even though OpenAI did make some nice announcements saying that the nonprofit was going to invest in some AI safety initiatives. Here's from this one AI watcher, Svi Mauschwitz. He says they're moving to complete the greatest theft in human history, or perhaps second business if you count what happened around the dissolution of the USSR. Are we going to let them get away with this? What do you think about the fact that this is effectively?
I didn't quite understand. I know you had thrown the tweet into our prep doc. I didn't fully understand. What is he calling the theft there?
The theft would be basically that the public was entitled to whatever OpenAI was building because it operated as a nonprofit, and now clearly the upside will be handed to Microsoft and the investors.
Okay. I don't feel too bad about that, because anyone who's lived under the illusion for the past few years that anything was actually meant for the public or OpenAI was truly open and about this mission, come on, no one really believed that, did they?
No, but I think if you start a company as a nonprofit, there should be some obligation to hold to that mission. I don't know. I'm going to be less cynical here. I'll be more idealistic, Ranjan. Maybe
keep going.
Switch
keep going
sides for a moment.
Yeah.
Come on, if there laws are laws, and if you started this way, you obviously got some of the startup capital from Elon to do it. I don't think it should be that easy to be like, nah, we're for profit now.
No, I mean,
enjoying that.
At a truly human level, I agree with you in terms of how
I'll take that, a truly human level.
Truly human level.
We have to go that far.
We have to go that's as far as I can go with it. But I mean, again, you had mentioned the board structure. There's again the cloud compute commitment. So much of this still feels so OpenAI. From the information, OpenAI Foundation's board controls the OpenAI Corporation's board through its ability to name and remove its directors, which could upend the company. So the nonprofit part of it still has a good deal of influence, but everyone on the foundation board is also on the for-profit company's board, with the exception of Carnegie Mellon University's machine learning department head Zico Kelter. I mean, you don't get more OpenAI in terms of corporate governance and structure than that announcement. And I also wonder, why did Zico not get the call for the for-profit board? That's pretty odd that one person gets a stiff arm on that announcement.
I read that and I was just like, I got to get Zico on the podcast.
You got it. What happened,
fear
Zico?
Not, there will be an invite in Zico's inbox, probably by the time you listen to this show. So
I think you had mentioned this at the top. One of the kind of also interesting subtexts of this for me is, does this mean AGI is nowhere on the horizon? Because remember, Sam gave Satya a pretty sweetheart deal here. And all he had to ever do was just say AGI and everything would have gone his way. Does this mean Sam's not going to be declaring AGI anytime soon because now he doesn't have to? He's already started backing off of it for a while now.
Yeah, I think that we can all put that silly little acronym to the side for a while, because if it ever had meaning, that meaning has been sort of completely dissolved. And I will put the death date on AGI back to, I think you know what I'm about to say, Sam Altman's appearance on Theo Von, where he basically said GPT-5 was going to be AGI without using the term. And then he rolled it out and everyone's like, huh?
The historic date of Theo Von, or a historic presence of Theo Von in this conversation. And also remember, it's Halloween. You can easy date to remember that that's the day that, from a corporate structure standpoint, OpenAI made us all be able to move on from the absurd concept and notion of what AGI is or could be. So let's retire it. It's done. Well, we can still talk about ASI and superintelligence, but
before we retire it, though, we should actually talk about, there's some juicy details in this information story about the agreement between OpenAI and Microsoft that term did come up. AGI did come up and was used as a negotiating tactic. Leading up to this from the story, leading up to the restructuring, Microsoft and OpenAI were often at odds over how long Microsoft will get access to the startup's intellectual property. OpenAI had threatened to declare it had reached artificial general intelligence, or AI that could handle most economically valuable work. which could have abruptly ended Microsoft's rights to reuse the startup's technology. The negotiations were also complicated because the prior OpenAI structure promised to pay out future profits to Microsoft before other investors got a share of profits, a potential advantage that's no longer in place. Under the new agreement, Microsoft will keep getting access to OpenAI's models after AGI is reached with appropriate safety guardrails. And OpenAI will continue to have the exclusive rights to and OpenAI will continue to have the exclusive rights to resell OpenAI's models on its Azure cloud service until AGI is reached. I think that's a typo. I think that was Microsoft. AGI did come up in the negotiations. These negotiations got nasty.
They must have been amazing to just
I would love to have been there. OpenAI threatened to call antitrust regulators to come into this after the way that Microsoft held it over to them.
Yeah, I mean, and imagine lawyer just sitting across the table. Hey, we can just say AGI at any time. But again, that is how far away from AGI GPT-5 must have been even internally in their own understanding of it if they gave up, because that's a pretty good card to have in your back pocket. So to just give that up, it means you're not going to be saying it anytime soon. But what I keep thinking about, and I'm very excited about, I want this IPO to happen because I want like an actual gap compliant, or at least, gap adjusted reading of what are OpenAI's financials. Because even like in a live stream in the information reporting, it talks about how Sam Altman is talking about they have $1.4 trillion worth of financial obligation from all of these data center commitments. I mean, throw another 250 bill on with Microsoft, even though their revenue is going to be 13 billion this year, and I think it's 20 billion they're losing this year. Like, I just want to see these financials actually just laid out clearly. I've loved all the reporting and the leaks and whatever else around trying to understand the actual economics of their business, but that's going to give us a better look at how is this all working, and we need that as an industry. So Thank you for the public service whenever this happens.
When I read that they're thinking about an IPO, and folks, by the way, MG Siegler is going to be on the show next week for his first week of the month appearance. I think we'll probably do it on Wednesday, but stay tuned for that. We'll talk about the potential OpenAI IPO at length. But Ranjan, just to address it here, the one thing that I just thought was so funny was, or I don't know, absurd, is have we ever had a company that is going to go for $1 trillion IPO on 13 billion in revenue? I mean, then of course that's this year's revenue, so maybe they'll grow it now. I'm sure they'll grow it next year. The question is by how much? But then 120 billion in losses over a 3 or 4 year period. I mean, has that ever happened?
You know what? I cannot think about from a multiple perspective. I mean, that's already just insane, but I'm sure we've seen that at some point. From a loss perspective, certainly not, because I can't imagine at this scale, any company ever losing that much money and being able to confidently even think about an IPO. So do you think it happened? When do you think they go for it?
I think it's going to be a while. I mean, again, and just so Altman did tweet out. So he did this live stream this week. He shared some perspective there and then tweeted out some notes about it. I mean, on the live stream, he said OpenAI has 1.4 trillion worth of financial obligation, and it's made commitments to use 30 gigawatts of data center capacity. But OpenAI's revenue is going to be 13 billion this year, and we already have 800 million people using ChatGPT. I just don't see how you go from, and I could be wrong, but I don't see how you go from OpenAI's base of revenue now to $1.4 trillion that it can spend and ever have a economically viable company. I mean, we could go back to this and I'll look like an idiot when OpenAI pulls it off. But to me, the financial picture just seems absurd.
Well, do you know what could help them in kind of creating a more viable financial picture?
Erotic ChatGPT.
Well, certainly erotic ChatGPT. I was going to say advertisements, but erotic ChatGPT can also work there.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the advertising and there are also, for folks, we've talked about this study that there's 95% of AI pilots are not generating an ROI from MIT. There was a study this week that said 74% of enterprises are actually finding an ROI from Wharton. So it's dueling studies, another data point. But I think before we get there, we should talk a little bit about this Sam Altman memo and what he basically spoke about in terms of OpenAI's roadmap. So let me just run this by you. He says, we have internal goals of, and this might be another way that they end up making the money. We have internal goals of having an automated AI research intern by September of 2026, running on hundreds of thousands of GPUs, and a true automated AI researcher by March of 2028. We may totally fail at this goal, but given the extraordinary potential impact, given the extraordinary potential impacts, we think it is in the public's interest to be transparent about this.
Okay, hold on.
This was totally overlooked in this week's news, but I think this is the most important piece of OpenAI. Well, not the most important, but a very important piece of information on OpenAI. They're trying to cause an intelligence explosion, and they believe they're going to get there within 3 years.
Wait, I need you to explain this one for me, because when I read that part of the memo, that was my biggest Sam Altman eye roll moment. Because again, one, talking about the public interest and the impact on the public interest. Sam, you don't have to do that anymore. It's like you're for profit now. It's okay. Those kind of, bombastic statements around public interest, it's over. It's okay. You don't have to do that. But also like vague language around what is an intern versus a researcher? Why does a research intern need hundreds of thousands of GPUs when actually, deep research for across all platforms is very good right now. Like, what do you think he meant by intern versus researcher, and what is a true automated AI researcher?
Okay, I will take a swing at this.
Let's go.
I think an intern is an AI program that can do work for you and then come back, and you have to really supervise it a lot. So if you're,
can't you do that now?
I think you can, but it's an AI research intern. So I think he is putting it on. I know you're laughing at it, but I think he's putting it on what they're seeing today. And I'm taking it seriously because I don't think OpenAI is the only one trying to do this. Also, like Anthropic is also trying to do this. All these labs are trying to effectively cause an intelligence explosion by building AI that can improve itself. And so my reading of this is an AI research intern is going to be something that's like not autonomous. And a true automated AI researcher by March of 2028 means effectively you give it tasks and it just will go and in an automated fashion be able to improve your models, come up with new methods to improve models, and then the models will just start improving themselves. I think that Sam caveats it in a good way. We may totally fail at this goal. But I also think that it's important for them to be out in the open saying that this is what they want to do. This is obviously the path they think is going to get them to, I won't even say AGI, but like human level intelligence or super intelligence. And that's why I titled the section of this section of the podcast, Sam Altman's Next 3 Years, because these 3 years are going to be very interesting.
That was a noble effort. I'll give you that. I think, okay, if we're reading it as some kind of self-evolving model that's like improving at the model level rather than just doing the task, I think that can get us to something that starts to be interesting. But I think I'm going to say this is one of Sam Altman's lesser interesting memos that I've read. I feel like, I don't know, he's in the past, there's much more kind of concrete visions of what the future looks like. And now he's giving vague notions and just saying buzzwords like researcher. He goes on to talk about like an AI cloud that enables huge businesses. Like, I don't know. Do you genuinely believe this is like a pretty important Sam Altman memo? Or do you think that actually, does this show he's losing a bit of steam?
No, I wouldn't say he's losing steam at all. I have a completely opposite read than you do.
Okay.
I think an automated AI researcher is not like, it's not anywhere close to a pie in the sky or amorphous. It's an obvious thing that they want these recursively self-improving AI systems, and they're going out to build them. And that to me is, if you want to see fast progress in AI, if you want to see a payoff of all these billions, maybe $1 trillion+ that they are going to, invest in this stuff, you almost need that. And it's right. We don't have a real picture of what that looks like today. But the fact that that is the North Star, I think, is very important, because if they do pull it off, and they may not, but if they do pull it off, the ride that we're on up until this point is going to feel like, a small children's train compared to what we'll be on, should this vision
Japanese
manifest.
bullet train. I think I'm going to give you again credit for extrapolating into something that is actually a lot more, I don't know, exciting. But to me, again, the actual words he used in this, like he goes on to say, in 2026, we expect that our AI systems may be able to make small new discoveries. In 2028, we could be looking at big ones. I still don't understand, because like we talked the other day about DeepMind and like the cell to structure model that's making massive advances in cancer research. Like generative AI and large language models are already making big discoveries and exciting discoveries. But then again, once he goes on to say, we think that science and the institutions that let us widely distribute the fruits of science are the most important ways that the quality of life improves over time. Like, again, bringing it back to quality of life and the public interest. Sam, you don't have to do that anymore. Just show us some good numbers.
Sam has definitely had some fortune cookie stuff, and he always does. But he has had.
But there was good
fortune
cookie stuff before. He had good fortune cookies.
Yeah, I mean, he had a tweet this week: "All palaces are temporary palaces. All theories are provisional theories." And someone quote tweeted and was just like, "Can you just focus on building a company?"
That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to at least make them good, as opposed to kind of amorphous, vague statement. Public interest.
Okay.
Make them just off the wall.
I'm standing on the table for my perspective here, and I hear your skepticism, but I think the entire AI industry is trying to move this way. They're trying to build AI models that improve the standard AI models. Just as the cell to sentence model with Google was able to look at a bunch of different treatments and make hypotheses about like which would get the cancer cells to raise their hands to the immune system. They're going to try to get AI models to make a bunch of different hypotheses about the way to build better models, and then at some point act on them and check their work. And so I think we're living in this moment where AI has started to code really well. And people are like, well, what sort of use cases does that actually have? Right. And well, okay, it can help coders build stuff, but it's also like that is the foundational layer for anything you want to build. And once AI starts to code well, you can start thinking about, AI then stepping in where researchers are. I'm not saying Sam's going to pull it off. I'm just saying that this is the vision. This is the ultimate vision. And
I agree.
The fact that he has a timeline on it, we'll be able over the next 3 years to check his progress.
I agree with all of everything you said. Sam didn't say it in such words. He could have. I feel it's that line between overly like kind of like the tweet you just read. That's like classic Sam, or just lay out a really concrete vision that's like saying exactly self-recursive improvement in models like that. Just say that if that's what the vision is. But
okay,
he kind
I'm
of
with you. Look,
yeah.
He obviously should have hired the Ranjan Roy marketing agency.
That was the mistake.
Huge mistake.
Yeah.
But let's talk before we go on to some other stuff. Let's talk briefly about this AI cloud that enables huge business. It is interesting. Like they are building with the support of the AI clouds that enable huge businesses, NVIDIA, Oracle, and Microsoft. But now he's saying they want to build it themselves on the product side. Like you said, we're trying to move towards a true platform where people and companies build on top of our offerings will capture the most value. Today, people can build on our API and apps in ChatGPT. Eventually, we want to offer an AI cloud that enables huge businesses. What do you think about that?
Okay. You're right. Now rereading that, my first read of that was kind of like that already exists. So again, as this kind of like grandiose futuristic vision, that wasn't that interesting, but maybe that is kind of a dig at Microsoft and Google and Oracle even, and saying like, your big Azure business that just grew 39% year on year and is at the growth engine of your entire business. Is he saying that OpenAI is going to be moving in that direction? That's interesting.
Yeah, let me make a point here. On top of this moment that OpenAI has ushered in, Microsoft has become a $4 trillion company. NVIDIA has become a $5 trillion company. Google is nearing $4 trillion. Even Google, the much forlorn Google, is getting close to $4 trillion. with just an absolutely fantastic earnings report this week. And OpenAI is like looking around and it's being like, well, NVIDIA builds infrastructure and NVIDIA designs large language models, the Nemotron models. It's saying, well, Microsoft has this cloud business and Microsoft is building its own LLMs. Amazon has this cloud business and Amazon is building its own LLMs. Google has its own cloud business and Google is building its own LLMs. Everyone seems to be doing well. We're building LLMs. Why aren't we a cloud? That's what Sam's saying.
All right, listeners, I will step back from my earlier statements. I think Alex might have convinced me. Okay, I think there's something here. I think you're right that he is at least hinting at they want a piece of that entire infrastructure layer. What that looks like, it remains to be seen. But and I'll say we're going to get into the ads conversation. To me, this is a lot more interesting and exciting if they're actually going to be going after all the large cloud providers versus just kind of giving us Sora personalized ads. This could be something that he starts leaning into a lot more now that we think about like what they have, what picture they need to paint to actually make it to an IPO.
Now that I have made the case that this is the smart, bold business decision, and they may not make it there, but this is certainly where they're heading, I want to take a break, and then on the other side of this break, sort of allow myself to unfortunately make the counter argument, because we've been hinting at ads this entire time, but there is a conversation that OpenAI is going through a Facebookification process where all the executives have come from Meta. They have putting in Facebook processes and they're chasing a Facebook business model. And so it is interesting to see on the ground how different this is compared to that memo that Sam Altman wrote. So let's cover that right after this. And we're back here on Big Technology Podcast Friday edition with Ranjan Roy of Margins. As we do every week, we break down the week's news in the first half. We went through the Microsoft and OpenAI agreement, and Sam Altman's big plan for the future of OpenAI. And I stood on the table here and said, they are making bold bets. They're trying to be a massive business, autonomous research, their own cloud. And then you look at what's happening on the ground inside OpenAI. And what we see there is a mirroring of Facebook in many ways that are making OpenAI's employees themselves quite uncomfortable. So here's from the information. OpenAI readies itself for its Facebook era. In the 3 years since OpenAI introduced ChatGPT, the company has seen an influx of leadership and staff from Meta, even as Meta has poached liberally from OpenAI in recent months. Of the people who list OpenAI as their current employer on LinkedIn, approximately 630 previously worked for Meta, which represents 20% of the roughly 3,000 total employees at OpenAI. The contingent is so large that OpenAI's Slack has a channel just for former Meta employees, including according to one of the current employees. As the Meta alums have arrived, it's become evident that some of OpenAI's latest strategies and initiatives do resemble the tactics Meta used to grow a corporate juggernaut. OpenAI itself is keenly interested in growing into a similarly gigantic form, an effort to satisfy investors and justify the $500 billion valuation it received a few months ago. So, Ranjan, we've talked about it, at length about all the OpenAI or all the Facebook executives now working within OpenAI. Does what they're actually doing in their hiring practices show a very different direction than the one Sam is talking about in his tweets and live streams?
I think certainly yes. I think it's telling and almost, I don't want to say funny, but like, and we've talked about this since the moment Fiji Simo was hired, when the moment Pulse came out, certainly when Sora came out, like they're just laying this groundwork and infrastructure for just lots of ads. And I actually think they're going to have to release this ahead of any kind of IPO because, online advertising, especially whatever that next wave of AI platform advertising is going to be very different than it looks today across any Meta platform, Facebook, Instagram, or even a TikTok. So that is the next big market. They're incredibly well positioned, but it certainly doesn't square with any of the big, no one is going to like to hear when you're painting this futuristic vision that it's just going to be a bunch of ads stuffed into whatever your feed, even though now it's not going to be a feed, but it's going to be like a chat conversation. So it's definitely not as grandiose, but it's certainly what's going to happen.
Yeah, and when you look at and this is again, I'm like, I made this whole case for like, all right, OpenAI is going for the gold, and maybe they are, but I also think they need to build an intermediate business, and I don't know if this is going to really work out if they end up being an ads business above all else. But it certainly seems like they're going that way. We've talked about Pulse, which is this morning update that is available to ChatGPT Pro users right now. That is like an obvious media or ad product coming up. And there's also, this is from the Information story, OpenAI employee worries range from the perceived shallowness and potential abuse of Sora, the company's new video app, which doubles as a social network and is rocketed to the top of the App Store charts, to recent comments from OpenAI's leaders suggesting a growing openness to advertising as a revenue stream. I mean, Sora is almost case in point of like what happens when you merge Facebook ethos with an OpenAI ethos, right? It had so a kind of disregard for typical norms like privacy, some good engagement stuff to get you like interacting with your friends, social components, notifications. It felt like they almost did the Facebook version of AI better than Facebook did. I mean, not only almost, they did. And you saw how flat Facebook's fell with vibes. So
yeah,
it
and
is starting to look very
even
similar.
actually in terms of the Logan Paul, like being able to use him as a cameo on Sora,
Jake Paul.
like, oh,
Get
sorry,
your Pauls
Jake
right.
Paul. All right, okay. Always get my Pauls wrong. Even Jake Paul, like being used as a cameo, and I remember like at first it was actually brilliant. Like at first, a lot of people were kind of horrified that someone would let themselves have their likeness be used so openly, and people kind of making fun of it. And actually, to Sam's credit too, he did that. And it was such a perfect seeding of a growth hack because, like, when you open that blank start problem of what do I create, but suddenly being able to make fun of Jake Paul and Sam Altman is what everyone wants to do anyways, and is a deep human trait of all of us. So to enable that was a great growth hack and really feels like just classic Facebook product. So
Now,
they're doing well.
Now, remember, OpenAI started as a research lab, and there have been people that have like sort of stayed there from those research days. But as they bring in these Meta executives, some of their perspectives have flown in. Here, this is again from the story. In 2024, a long memo from Kevin Weil, a former Meta executive, who was then serving as the chief product officer, caused a bit of a stir shortly after he joined. In the document, Weil, who was known at Meta for his lengthy missives, detailed his goal of getting ChatGPT to 1 billion weekly active users and having it pass the toothbrush test, a term former Google CEO Larry Page coined to refer to products consumers use daily. Some executives, including Mira Murati, who was then OpenAI's chief technology officer, chafed at Weil's memo and felt the naked emphasis on simply increasing users rather than trying to build a quality product that could attract users was the wrong strategy. Very interesting culture clash going on within that company. And Mira is no longer there. So it seems obvious which elements of the company have won.
Yeah, I like the toothbrush test, a product you use daily, is a good kind of barometer or metric for this. And I mean, ChatGPT certainly has passed the toothbrush test. There's times when I actually wish they did not kind of engagement farm the hell out of it because it's a pretty compelling daily use product for anyone. But obviously, they need to kind of increase time on site, total chat interactions, and they're going to have those KPIs in a dashboard. But my favorite part of this is the idea that maybe Mira Murati, this is why she doesn't even need a product and is raising $1 billion with no product. So it does not actually.
If you can get $1 billion for no product, go get it.
Yeah, and that way the product is not going to be used in the wrong way and not going to be used for engagement farming because there's no product.
There's no product.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
I swear, any VC who bought that, I mean, we will see something, but I don't know.
I think that is
has a similar pitch.
The purest form of product that avoids all of this kind of like sullying of greatness is no product at all. That's my
I think
Zen
we'll try to do
Friday.
that with the podcast. We will just not play and not record any episodes so as not to upset the balance of the universe.
I think that's the only way. I think
You think advertisers would be into that?
I mean, they must. Or maybe we'll just get some VC funding.
No, we could just get we should just get Mira and Elias to advertise on our non-show.
No product, no show.
No product,
This
no
is the
show,
future.
no ads. God bless.
As we're all just downloading Dave's Hot Chicken app for free sliders. Reference to
you saw
last
it?
week's.
This week, Jensen and the CEOs of Samsung and I think
I'm telling
one
you,
other company, they were eating
Samsung
fried
and Jensen,
chicken.
Longtime readers of Margins will know of my. I love fried chicken, and I use it to explain. I've written a lot about fried chicken and private equity with Popeyes. It's a long running thing. I love when it shows up at the center of the great business stories, and it continues to do so.
Yes.
That's forget AGI or ASI. Fried chicken is the barometer for where greatness in tech lies.
So one more part of this story that was really interesting to me is at the very end, super buried, but I would have written an entire story based out of this. I don't know if they didn't have the sourcing there or what happened, but some employees have bristled at how post-training, when a model learns to follow instructions and respond how humans prefer, has started to emphasize engagement metrics, according to a former employee. They have felt the new emphasis is another sign that OpenAI is beginning to become another Meta. We don't want to become engagement farmers, a current employee said. Wait a second. Post-training, core of the model, they're building in engagement hacking or emphasizing engagement metrics. That's a huge story.
Yeah, I mean, but anyone who uses ChatGPT sees it baked into the product. We've talked about this a lot. I've complained about this a lot, that you can ask a very straightforward question that has a very straightforward answer, and it has to ask you, would you like to do these other three things? And here's another chart or a slide or something, like the entire product it's so clear what is happening. And I'm sure it works. And I guess that really does kind of like solidify the metification of OpenAI, where, you can, when it's so baked into the product that you can viscerally feel it, I think it shows that you've been metified.
Right. And you had talked pretty recently about how like OpenAI just wants to use its compute. And we had some readers being like, what is Ranjan talking about? And I think we're starting to get some illumination here, which is that they are chasing users. They want engagement. More engagement probably leads to more investment. They think they'll get the cost down eventually. And they have an IPO. And they sort of will figure it out after the IPO.
Well, yeah, no, because the 1.4 trillion in financial commitments around data centers and compute, they have to show that it's being leveraged and utilized in some way. Like we had talked about this in the Sora context, which is a very heavy compute usage. But to me, the Pulse, where it kind of works all night and to give you an update of things in the morning, and it's just draining compute even as you sleep. Like all of these products, typically you would think a company that's operating with some kind of margin is actually worried about, are we overusing compute? Every other enterprise in the world is definitely having conversations when it comes to AI around, are we doing this in an economically viable way? But OpenAI, they're building things that they're not worried about efficiency. They're worried about actually, does it use more compute? Because that's going to look great to the market. As counterintuitive as it shows, or as it may seem, it'll look good to the market, I'm convinced, to show we're actually using this kind of percentage of our overall capacity.
And now on the flip side, you wonder, well, what's happening at Meta? Because Mark Zuckerberg's sitting over there in Menlo Park, and he's like, wait a second, OpenAI has the fastest growing consumer application of all time. It has lots of my executives. It has a bot that's become not only informational, but something that's having relationships with many of its users, and people are getting less and less interested in having relationships with other people on social media, and they're very well capitalized. And so I've actually gone from being like, well, Meta, not Google, might be the most under threat from this generative AI moment. And Meta, to Mark Zuckerberg's credit, is going to spend to try to stay in the game. And when it told Wall Street this week that it was going to spend a lot more in order to do it, Wall Street did not like that. And Meta stock is down 12.5% this week as of this recording. I'm actually kind of curious what your perspective is on this Meta situation. Is it an existential threat, and how does the business get through if it's going to actually fight this way?
Well, I was definitely thinking a lot about that. Why Meta, it was a negative signal to the market that they're increasing their CapEx spend, whereas Microsoft and Google, it was almost a show of strength to kind of continue that story on CapEx spending. And I think it's got to be because when Google or Microsoft spend more, and even Amazon on CapEx, part of the assumption embedded in that is companies will use that and give them money for that capacity. Like it's not just training your own models, it's not just feeding your own product. It's you're building an entire infrastructure that people will spend money to be part of. Whereas with Meta, every dollar they spend, it only sees a return when it actually flows into one of their products. So it's a very different kind of spending than the other tech giants. So that was my read. I don't know. How did you think about it?
No, that makes sense. But then it's also interesting. I'm actually curious what you think about the product side of Meta also. Because you're going to get less of an immediate reward for your spending, and your product is under threat.
Yeah, it's a good point, but to me, I don't know. I think, okay, the product side, one, we've talked about this a bunch recently. Like, I think Meta is going into the hardware business in a big way. I think they're going to go actually start competing with Apple. So the way AI flows into actual kind of more from the hardware side, I think they're going to have like a pretty interesting place in all of this competitively. But you can also look at like, remember when iOS 14.5 came out, Meta, everyone said their ads business was dead. And they leverage like classic AI and machine learning to actually solve their ads problem and their ad targeting problem. So they have actually shown using AI to actually improve your own existing business. They probably showed that better than anyone. It wasn't an add-on or kind of like a tack-on feature. It literally transformed and saved the core advertising business. So I think that they're in two businesses right now, advertising and potentially hardware, and AI can help both.
Here's my new take is that Meta might want to consider not developing its own models and just building products on top of others.
I think I agree with that because Llama always almost felt like almost a defensive posture or not defensive, like Trojan horse just to kind of scare the open AIs of the world. Open source, here you go. So I think it's never really been clear, and clearly all the upheaval with at FAIR and now what's it called again? TBD.
That's the Superintelligence Lab is now called.
Yeah, the Superintelligence Lab. Like it's clear that there has not been a straight line path over there in terms of model development.
Right. Okay. We should also talk about this AI wobble because, this week, obviously, we got a lot of numbers about whether the AI investment is like seeing return. And I mean, some investors are making this argument that unlike, let's say, the dot-com boom where you laid all that fiber and 95% of it was dark, now all the GPUs are being used. So therefore, no bubble. But what's your perspective on the AI wobble?
Yeah, this is my favorite phrase of the week. I hope everyone, it was just in the Goldman Sachs morning briefing newsletter from like a managing partner and CIO of a fund I had not heard of. AI wobble, the idea that so much of the current market action and growth is completely centered around AI, but the idea that there is a much more immediate actual kind of return potential here, I think is how I view the market. So comparing this to Internet Bubble 1.0 has never been the correct corollary for me. So I'm loving this AI wobble. It's not a bubble. We're going to get a bit of a wobble maybe when OpenAI announces their $1 trillion IPO and we actually look at their balance sheet and P&L, but I think it's going to be a wobble.
My one question is, I mean, this is going to come up in a conversation that Nick Clegg will have here on the podcast coming up in a couple of weeks, and he's the former president of global affairs at Meta. All this money is going into this AI model development. with the belief that if you reach AGI or super intelligence or whatever it is, that you will, and you alone will possess it. And there's been no evidence to show that like once a company builds a model of that nature, that they can hoard that intelligence. So,
well, that's why
that's the
Sam's
best
doing it for the
argument.
public good. It's
Yeah.
for the public good.
But if that's the case, then all that money's going to light on fire if you can't hoard the intelligence. Interesting.
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, Alex had a tweet in our prep doc that was very interesting to me because Sundar basically like proudly saying 150 Google Cloud customers
This is
processed
wild. Yeah.
1 trillion tokens, and then had some kind of standard case study metrics about email open rates and stuff like creating campaign efficiency. But when you actually map out the numbers there, that's less than $1 million using their own token cost per enterprise. So you're at 150 million in revenue, which is 0.3% of GCP's overall annual revenue. So the scale is interesting to me, where like, I think that it just reflects like no one has any idea what the economics of any of this are. Like we've talked about this at length. How do you value a company? This isn't software. This is something different. Maybe it's more industrials. Maybe it's more traditional retail, like apparel retail even. The actual kind of economics of generative AI, no one knows. And this was such a perfect encapsulation of it, where Sundar is just like, bragging on Twitter. And then when you actually just calculate it out based on their own numbers, it's kind of underwhelming.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, obviously the stakes they get raised higher every week. This week, we even talk about it. NVIDIA hit $5 trillion. It's like an afterthought. It took three months to go from 4 trillion to 5 trillion. Insane.
I'm more concerned about Jensen's fried chicken order in Korea than
I know that came up first, which is
in market cap.
All right, so let's close with this story about this new humanoid robot, the 1X Technologies Neo. Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal wrote, I tried the robot that's coming to live with you. It's still part human. She describes her experience with it. The 5'6" robot shuffled to the dishwasher, pulled the door handle, and slid a fork, tines up naturally into the silverware holder. Then it grabbed a towel to wipe the counter. Later, it folded my sweater and fetched a bottle of water from the fridge. It was wild to watch. Sure, Neo nearly toppled over while closing the dishwasher, took 2 minutes to fold a shirt, and twisted its arm attempting to dance the Macarena. But, she goes, I didn't mention Neo had a human puppet master controlling it with a VR headset. You like this? It's a person using VR to control a robot in your house. You like this?
No, I actually don't like it. I was just saying that for the sake of argument.
Well, Ranjan, now you have to make the case for it. You kept the listeners on the line the entire show saying you were going to like this. Now you're out.
Okay, here's what I like about it.
Okay, now we're talking.
Yeah. To me, I respect and like a startup going for it. Everyone has painted the picture, Elon more than others, that humanoid robots, remember Optimus, haven't heard much about that recently. This is the future. I like that a startup is actually like pre-order. It's not perfect. There's a person who's going to be looking inside your house all day long and controlling this remotely, but we're going for it. We're doing it. If this is truly the future, we're going to at least take a shot and try to do it. That's my positive case. And I think I respect it.
People allow real humans in their house during the day. So this idea, I mean, the thing that got me was he was like, this robot is training. It needs to learn the use cases in your house. We'll collect data, and then eventually we'll be able to automate that. It's the second part of that I'm not 100% sure. Like, people have done this with chatbots. The pre-LLM chatbots were like, we just need to collect data on what people want, and then we'll find a way to build that. And they couldn't until the technology breakthrough happened. So this idea that they're building a company with a direct shot to like a humanoid robot that works, to me is not promised. But yeah, I guess, okay, I'm coming around to you here. Kudos for trying.
Well, do you know what? But to take the other side, because that's really where my mind is, I think I've said this in past episodes. I just never thought that the form factor of robotics needs to be humanoid. Like it makes everything more difficult. And I wish, and I know I've lost this battle. I've given up. Everyone wants a humanoid robot. I rather would have a laundry folding robot in one corner of my house, like the Roomba vision. Like you didn't need a humanoid robot to hold a vacuum cleaner that you already have to vacuum your house. Just make a little disc-like thing and it actually works great. So I would rather have a series of robots around the house specialized for their task rather than needing this kind of, actually it looks kind of cool. I'll give them. It's like looks like what we all imagine a humanoid robot to look like, with like a this weird mask type, blank mask face that someone somewhere is looking into your house through and controlling through VR. It looks cool, but I just no humanoid robots. Maybe it's not too late.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you that my reaction so Joanna made a great video about this, and my reaction when like the human behind the robot started speaking was like, can you please shut up? Like the guy's name was Turing. That was his first name.
Wow.
It was his real first name was Turing.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. The teleoperator. But I'm also concerned about this future where people in wealthy countries are buying these bots for like $30,000 and then paying like a service fee of like $100 a month. And then on the other end, you have just like warehouses filled with like thousands of people in the Philippines that are just like operating these bots for them as like virtual housekeepers. And I mean, maybe that gives, some, creates some jobs in the Philippines, but it just feels dystopian to me. I don't like it.
I mean, I'm not to be even overly cynical, but that's how a lot of globalization worked. I mean, call centers were basically like a early precursor to that. So I think that side, but I don't know, the ability, like how easily could the person on the other end just fuck up your house? Like,
no, that's a very good question.
Like,
now they say,
what's stopping them? Is there? Yeah.
Now they say they have zones. They have like zones that the robot can't go into, and like the robot is able to lift certain like very heavy weights, but like they say it's not going to be able to. They're not going to let it. Let's be honest. Like there's probably a way around it. If you give a person with a robot in your house like free reign around your house, there's definitely going to be one who's like, I don't like the person who's like employing me. I'm going to smash some frames and stuff like that for sure. And then of course, we have cloud outages all the time. So for me, the biggest worry is like, humanoid robot holding my baby gets hit with an AWS.
Anyone who's let
wait,
that
I'm not
happen.
done with the tweet. AWS cloud outages happen and the baby drops.
Anyone who lets that happen. I'm just telling you, don't let me into your house through the guise of a VR controlled humanoid robot, because
Ranjan will smash your shit up.
I am not the teleoperator. Only mischief can take place at that point. But I, again, respect them actually trying to make this a real thing rather than just endless talk and demos. They're trying.
Well,
so
if you came in here trying to make
X Technologies.
If you came in here trying to make a convincing argument for the Neo robot, I'm not buying it. Especially not letting you in my house with the ability to lift heavy things and smash my stuff up.
But you know what? One more positive thing. The company's name is kind of awesome too. 1X Technologies. Is that like a play on like everyone wants 10X, everyone wants 100X, but you know what?
1X.
We're 1X.
Dude, that is a great name. Okay, I suddenly believe in this technology.
Yeah, I think 1X, it's real. It's on the ground. It's happening. We don't need your 10 or 100X. Our robots are only 1X, and we're okay with that.
Are you going to dress up as the Neo for Halloween?
I wonder if we're going to see a Neo robot out there, but that's it.
I hope we do.
To whoever is dressing up as Neo, meaning you put together that costume in the last 2 days, I salute you more so than the robot itself.
I've had a week to prepare, so I can tell you what my costume's going to be. The Dave Hot Chicken Sandwich. My wife will be the ketchup bottle.
The app.
The app. How about I do. The new couple Halloween 1-2 is one person is the Dave's Hot Chicken app and the other person is Sora.
He's the slider. Oh, Sora. Okay.
Sora. Number 1 and number 2. All right, Ranjan, I think we should say farewell before this really goes off the rails.
I think it's time. 1X Technologies.
All right, everybody, have a great weekend. We'll be back on the feed next with MG Siegler talking about potential OpenAI IPO and everything else around that. So thanks to you, Ranjan. Thanks to everybody for listening. And we'll see you next time on Big Technology Podcast.